Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Classic movies literally invented movie magic, and they hold a timeless charm that needs to be preserved. So how can we stop them from dying out? Classic cinema is rapidly declining in popularity, largely because streaming services prioritize only the newest content. As a result, viewers are actually losing the ability to engage with the language of older movies, which truly speak a different vernacular than most of today's visual stories.
You need to know how ideas and emotions are expressed through a visual form.
Many young people just haven't been conditioned to watch movies with black and white visuals, super long takes, film grain, or theatrical dialogue, and so it's understandable when they voice that they don't even really get the hype over many of these older films. But classic movies are a fundamental influence on today's stories, an important window into the past, and a reminder of the universality of the human experience.
What makes George Bailey so rich, finally, is that he had the respect and love, and that he was part of a group, that he was a part of a community. Without that, you're not whole.
Here's our take on why and how we need to keep the classics alive.
I'm ready for my close-up.
Young people, especially millennials, are often blamed for killing classic movies. The New York Post reported on a study that delivered a pretty bleak picture. Less than a quarter of millennials have watched a film from start to finish that was made back in the 1940s or 50s. 30% of young people also admit to never having watched a black and white film all the way through, with 20% branding the films boring.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
However, if we look closer, the real cause of classic cinema's mortal illness is the lack of education and accessibility for potential young viewers. As more and more streaming services pop up, you would think access to classic movies would increase, and destinations like Mubi and the Criterion Channel are amazing resources for people who love cinema. But the most popular streaming services suffer from a recency bias so intense that their sad classics section might have just a handful of oldish movies. Generally, the definition of classic is thought to be a movie released before the switch from old Hollywood to new Hollywood, somewhere between 1970 and 1975. However, Netflix's classics page is dominated by beloved flicks from the 80s and 90s.
Please, baby, please, baby, please, baby, 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 please.
But as Scorsese observes, it's a chicken and egg issue. If people are given only one kind of thing and endlessly sold only one kind of thing, of course they're going to want more of that one kind of thing.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Older movies largely speak a different visual language than modern movies, and as a result of what's pushed to us, viewers are becoming less fluent in that language, leading them to frequently feel that anything made before a certain date is inaccessible, looks worse, and just feels unengaging. If you go back to movies made closer to the transition into sound cinema in the late 20s and 30s, movies bear a much stronger resemblance to plays. They're driven by witty dialogue with much longer takes.
Dexter, would you mind doing something for me?
Anything, what?
Get the heck out of here.
Wider, straightforward camera angles, and larger, more physical performances. Up until very recently, most movies were also shot on film. It was only in 2013 that digital cameras overtook film for the majority of movies, but the transition has been rapid. Now, over 90% of films are shot on digital.
I think Spielberg looked at the film and gave you some editing notes.
Because he said you have to shoot on film. It smells different. He's like, you cannot shoot a story that takes place in 1861 digitally. You just can't.
If you want to make good movies or TV shows in the present, the best way to do that is by studying the greats before you. Classic movies are the best and cheapest film school out there, and stealing from the past is basically the secret all top directors have long relied on.
To me, Scorsese is the great example of this, that it's okay to rip off, that you got to rip it off, though. You can't just borrow. Certainly I came to movies through a love of movies, so the movie buff in me informs the movies that I want to pillage from.
Peter Bogdanovich learned by interviewing legends like John Ford and Alfred Hitchcock, and making Orson Welles his mentor. Film school educated movie brat directors like Martin Scorsese, Steven Spielberg, and George Lucas packed their films with homages to Golden Age cinema, while their work in turn inspired the next generations.
All the movie brats learned from the masters
of the 40s and 50s and 30s, and I'm sure those in the 50s and 40s learned from the silent movie masters.
As Matt Zoller Seitz put it, the #1 reason for filmmakers to watch old movies is that they are filled with fantastic stuff that you can steal, and the vast majority of viewers will have no idea you stole it because they refuse to watch old movies.
Everyone steals. My favorite movie is Love Don't Cost a Thing with Nick Cannon, which is based on Can't Buy Me Love, which is based on Kramer vs. Kramer or something, which I think was Shakespeare.
Many well-regarded films are intentional and obvious in their homages, and if critics notice shots and camera movements directly copied from the past, this only seems to garner the new films more credit. See Damien Chazelle's La La Land drawing on almost every classic movie musical you can think of, or all the work of Quentin Tarantino paying tribute to everything from Jean-Luc Godard to spaghetti westerns. Even when movies are not directly or consciously referencing classic ones, you can see how the stories of the past have established a foundation of genres, themes, and tropes from which everything is drawn. Prior to Birdman and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Academy Award-winning Sunset Boulevard explored the idea of the washed-up actor.
Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
Before Venom, Let There Be Carnage, or American Psycho delved into the twisted mind of a killer, M gave its child-murdering antagonist a monologue that forced audiences to peer into the darkest corners of the human psyche.
Hab ich denn nicht dieses Verfluchte in mir? Das Feuer, die Stimme, die Qual.
Of course, just being an old movie isn't the same as being classic. The majority of movies made in the past haven't held up or continue to be viewed over the years. What makes something a classic is that it stands the test of time. And this underlines the biggest problem with racing to see everything that's new. No matter which era you're living in, most films, shows, or cultural works that come out will end up being relatively forgettable, and will probably fade from your memory pretty quick without leaving much of a mark. Thus, you're better off waiting to see which works are great enough to stick around.
So you're talking to me?
A classic is a form of time travel. It carries a story into the future and still moves audiences there, despite how radically the world has changed. And when we watch the best classic movies, we find that so much of the human condition is universal across time and space.
Well, everybody's favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life, because it's a man who in some ways is trying to deny his nature. In order to really appreciate the choices we've made, we have to go back and look at all the sacrifices we've made.
Even if we haven't experienced totally comparable situations, we can relate to the crushed dreams of George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life, or the desperation of the villagers in Seven Samurai, or the classist struggles facing Terry Malloy and the union workers in On the Waterfront, or confronting the meaning of your existence and death in The Seventh Seal.
Människor kan leva med döden för ögonen och vetskapen om alltings integritet.
A true classic is a story that makes you realize that we are all human beings dealing with universal feelings and fears. According to Roger Ebert, this is the fundamental reason why we go to the movies and why it's so important to see good films.
When we go to the theater and empathize with those people who are not ourselves, it makes us better people, more broad-minded.
And sure, of course, new movies can still do all this, but many of big-budget movies today are notably focused more on technology than human faces or feelings. Sometimes this is literally the case with movies like Transformers or Pacific Rim being centered on machines.
Man and machine become one.
And other times figuratively with Rise of Skywalker, Blade Runner 2049, and Gunpowder Milkshake being panned for shallow character development. But sometimes the more you add in terms of computerized special effects, flashy explosions, and crystal clear resolution, the less immersive, realistic, and truthful your art can feel in terms of reflecting the human condition. And whereas it used to be the case that the most popular movies at the box office were also the most awarded and critically revered, today's most humanistic films are released by indie producers and distributors like A24 and Neon, and just don't reach the same scale of audience they once did. Today, one of classic cinema's great champions is iconic Taxi Driver and Raging Bull director Martin Scorsese, who's attempting to preserve the merits of classic movie aesthetics not only as a working septuagenarian filmmaker, but also as a promoter of lesser-seen global cinema and an advocate for visual literacy education.
The respect for the language of cinema itself, the history should be taught. and the visual literacy should be taught.
Scorsese has famously said that Marvel is not real cinema, saying what's not there is revelation, mystery, or genuine emotional danger. And he compares today's big blockbusters to roller coaster rides. It's a contentious conversation, but the point is, while there's nothing wrong with enjoying a ride or any blockbuster entertainment, that doesn't mean it should replace humanistic cinema or visual storytelling that prioritizes rawness, realness, and thought.
I think it's wonderful that someone can make an ingenious, entertaining film that can make $100 million in a day. But for that to be the entire cinema is like the entire pharmaceutical business being devoted only to tranquilizers and Viagra.
William Faulkner wrote that the past is never dead, it's not even past. Past movies give us the gift of letting us consciously understand how the past has shaped and is actively still shaping us in innumerable ways.
We can't know where we're going unless we kind of know where we've been. We can't understand the future of the present until we have some sort of grappling with the past.
If the language of classic cinema dies out, future visual storytelling will undoubtedly get far worse in quality. And if we don't work to revive classics, we could lose these gems forever. After all, many movies are not well preserved in digital forms, and if the remaining physical reels are damaged or lost, they may cease to exist.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
The best way to convince streamers and institutions with funding that classic cinema matters is to watch it. So why not share old movies with each other the way we share TikToks, tweets, and binge-worthy TV shows? It's time to learn from the past, keep the best movies of all time alive, and use them to fuel new classics that will stand the test of time.
We're all handing influences down and inspiring from generation to generation.